one of the difficulties with the makeup was after a period of time. For me, it was about 10 hours. After about 10 hours, it became very hot, and I began to have symptoms like a head cold. I didn't have a head cold, but it felt like a head cold, and your mind started to wander.
Well, listen, Armin, it is a real pleasure to speak to you today. I've been wanting to meet you for such a long time. I'm the head of Star Trek at Screen Rant, but I have to tell you, Deep Space Nine is my absolute favorite Star Trek. It is the gold standard. It's the show I judge all other Star Trek by, and I judge most other TV shows by it, to be honest.
Well, thank you. We're very proud of the work we did, and it's lovely to hear those comments, especially since for years we thought of ourselves as the lost middle child. It's nice to hear that. I think over time people have realized the value of our show and how wonderful the episodes are. I'm very proud to be a part of that, to be part of Star Trek, and to especially be part of Deep Space Nine.
Yes, I mean, the show is certainly ahead of its time, and it holds up today upon rewatch. It is as relevant today as it was 30 years ago.
I think it's because we were more interested in exploring people's cosmos as opposed to planet's cosmos. We were interested in finding out how people who don't necessarily like each other have to live together. And that's an important thing and a universal thing that never goes away.
I want to talk a lot more about Deep Space Nine, but we're actually here to talk about FanFair Signatures.
Right.
It is such a cool way to connect with fans. Really great looking art pieces, individually personalized for each fan. Can you tell me a little bit about how your experiences with FanFair so far?
Absolutely. It is a wonderful organization. And if I duck my head, perhaps you can see one of their art pieces behind me. Mm-hmm. And it was a company started by Owen Delancey and his wife, Emily. Owen is the child of John Delancey. That's how I met them. They had started with John's signatures, and what they did, if people can see the artwork behind me, they started out with lithographs of John. Their company actually had started with maps of local areas that were art forms. They were beautiful, and then somebody convinced them to do lithographs of Q. And John and I were talking at a party, and he told me about it, and he asked me if I could join that group. So I did, and very happy with the artwork they came up with, very happy with the ability to sign really pieces of art and send them off to fans of the show. And to be involved in this company. They moved on from me. I brought them some people like Nana Visitor and some others. Then they expanded even further, and their expansion exploded this past year, where they got the license from the NFL to do all of their players as well. So they will have a huge amount of celebrities to choose from, and each celebrity has his or her own piece of artwork that goes with the signature. I think the pieces go for about $35. They come framed as well. Anyone who's framed a piece of art knows that $35 is rather cheap just for the frame, let alone the artwork and the signature. So it's an expanding company. They're called FanFair Signatures. They've been in existence, I would say, I'm going to make a guess here, like 6-7 years. But this idea of having Star Trek and NFL players sign things is only about 3-4 years at the most. Mm. And they're both great people. Emily and Owen are just great people. Wonderful. If people order, they get the orders in as quickly as possible and turn them around and send out the artwork as soon as they can.
There are 2 Quark art pieces available right now, I believe, and they're among the cooler ones that are available. And they both really suit Quark, their designs and just and his personality and just the whole accoutrement of Quark. Did you have any input in the designs?
None whatsoever. My only input is the signature. But I'm very grateful. I agree with you totally. And as I said, it's not just pictures; it's artwork. They are wonderfully creative at designing these things, and they find, I think the word is lithographers, that can do this. And they're just wonderfully done, and they make for a great Christmas present, a great birthday present for people who are interested in Star Trek and are collectors themselves. I would recommend highly that they find the FanFair Signature website. Perhaps you have it to show people during the course of the blog, and go there and look at it, because it's not just the people I've mentioned. There's quite a few others. So if you're looking for a particular favorite character, you may indeed find them there.
Now, since you personalize each piece for each fan who orders, and they can request a message,
yes, that's right.
What's the most popular phrase or message people have asked for from you?
Usually is pick your own. They tell me, pick your own. And so I have, I'm lucky to have, dozens and dozens of rules of acquisition, and I just flip through the books and I look at. I don't know usually the people that are asking for a signature, but I somehow intuit, okay, this person might like this rule of acquisition. So along with my signature, I usually write a rule of acquisition to go with it. But if someone has a birthday or wants to give it as a Christmas present, and they ask that, oh, can you say something nice for my husband, for my wife, for my children? I'm certainly happy to do that, as I'm sure everybody else who signs is as well.
Have you gotten any strange or unusual message requests? Anything really off the wall?
No, nothing off ball at all. Usually just a very short message asking me to say something nice to someone's girlfriend, boyfriend, something like that.
I'd love to talk to you again more about DS9. I love that you and Terry Farrell have just joined the Delta Flyers podcast, and you're rewatching DS9 now. The 3-year mission, as I believe you said on the podcast. Right. Are there any particular episodes you're excited to revisit?
I'm actually quite excited to see the earlier episodes, because I have not seen those episodes for 20 years. And going back and watching them is like watching them for the first time. Most of the work done, most of the stories, I have totally forgotten. And so this is a great exploration for me to become reacquainted with the work that I'm very proud of. But now I have particulars, specifics that I can point to. I've gotten through, I think, the first 8 episodes of Deep Space Nine. We're in the first season. And I'm amazed at the work, not only of the actors, who are really wonderful. And I must say, some of the guest stars that I've seen so far have done extraordinary work. I can see the series regulars sort of pussyfooting around trying to figure out who these characters are. I know that very quickly they will soon know exactly who they are and begin to be full-fledged, full-flushed out characterizations. But it's amazing to me that the guest stars who show up, without any reference whatsoever and do such incredibly good jobs.
One of the ones I'm looking forward to when you get to season 4 is Little Green Men, which I believe is right behind me. It's one of my favorite episodes. The Ferengi episodes were always a treat. And I believe I remember reading or hearing that whenever there was a Ferengi episode, you would gather the Ferengi actors together and rehearse.
That's absolutely true. And sometimes it wasn't just the Ferengi actors. Early on in the first season, perhaps bleeding into the second season as well, Renee and I would always rehearse the Quark and Odo scenes together at my house, which we did, and which helped cement our relationship, the chemistry that you see on the screen. I also did that with Garrick a couple of times with the root beer scene that is very familiar to a lot of people. That is a scene that we rehearsed at our home. But certainly, all the actors who portrayed Ferengi, including Wally Shawn at times, would come to my house during Ferengi episodes, and we would work through it. And the reason for it was, most of us are theater actors. We like to rehearse. When you do a TV show, you read through it for the director on the day of that you're shooting that particular scene. You read through it once, you read through it twice. You don't really rehearse. You just read through it. And then they send you away to your trailer, or to the makeup trailer to get touch-ups. And then you come back and shoot it. There's no real rehearsal there. So you don't really know what the other actors are going to do. You don't really know what you're going to do, really. And by rehearsing in my house for the weekend, we could form an ensemble. We could understand where each of us was coming from. It also helped for us to memorize the lines, because you have the picture of a little green man behind you. All of us, as everyone can see and everyone knows, we were encased in prosthetic makeup. One of the difficulties with the makeup was after a period of time. For me, it was about 10 hours. After about 10 hours, it became very hot, and I began to have symptoms like a head cold. I didn't have a head cold, but it felt like a head cold, and your mind started to wander. And yet, more often than not, on a Ferengi episode, we had another 4 or 5 hours to shoot. So lines became difficult to hold on to if you didn't have that rehearsal period in my home to cement those lines the way one does on stage, where anything can happen on stage, but the lines are so ingrained in your memory that you remember every word, every syllable all the time. And that's what we tried to inculcate when we were rehearsing at home.
I'm glad you brought up Renee. Friday was the 4-year anniversary of us losing Renee. Actually, on that day, my friend reminded me that you and he were on Boston Legal together. You did 7 episodes. I watched one of those episodes just to see both of you together without prosthetics.
Right.
That was a real treat.
I have a story that's related to that I've told several times, and if you don't mind, I'll
Sure.
tell it again.
I'd love to hear it.
When I got the script for the episode, for the scene that Renee and I did together, I called Renee up and said, Renee, I've been watching Boston Legal for a long time. And this scene that they have for the two of us, this is a Quark and Odo scene. This is. He said, yeah, it looks like that. They're not going to shoot it. They're not going to shoot it. It's just a gag. They just wrote it as a gag. It's not going to happen. But of course, they did shoot it. And while we were shooting it, after we did the master is the first shot of a scene. It's where you take in everything. You take in the set, you take in the actors, you take in the lights. It's the master shot. Usually you get a master shot at the very beginning of the scene, telling you where you're at, telling the audience the geographical location of where the scene takes place. So after shooting the master, there was a desk on the set. I was sitting on one side of the desk. Renee was on the other. In the middle was the gaffer, the person who does the lighting. And he didn't know me, so he turned to Renee and said, I just watched the two of you do that scene, and it looked like you'd been doing it for years. And we were in hysterics because, of course, we had been doing it for years.
Amazing. Quark is right up there at the top of the list, I think, of one of the greatest non-Starfleet Star Trek characters ever. Do you miss playing him? Because I got to tell you, I miss him, and I miss you playing him.
Well, thank you very much. There are times when I miss him. Then I remember the makeup. But yes, he was a great character. He is a great character. I'm flattered to find out that he's doing well in other series, that he's gotten a franchise, and he's expanding from his bar on Deep Space Nine. I do miss him at times. He taught me a great deal. When I started, I was a rather shy, reclusive sort of human being, and Quark taught me to be more outgoing, to be more people-friendly, to learn to show your emotions. I had done a lot of work before Quark. Most people think my career started with Quark, but it didn't. But he got me to come out of my shell, and I would like to revisit that every now and then. If someone were to ask me to be a recurring character on a Star Trek show, or any other show for that matter, as Quark, I would say yes. If they asked me to be a series regular, I would give that serious thought. I'm of a certain age now where getting into that prosthetic makeup on a regular basis might be a little daunting.
Star Trek Lower Decks, when you did that, the voice.
Yeah, no makeup, no memorization, really easy, lovely, and to play the character.
But you wore the teeth to get the.
I did wear the teeth,
right.
But ironically, they are the teeth that I had made, not for Lower Decks, but I had made. Ironically, in the last months of shooting Deep Space Nine, someone came into my trailer and took my teeth, and so Michael Westmore had to recreate another set of teeth on the spot for the day that I was shooting. Those teeth too disappeared. Not from my trailer, but when I packed up everything. I know I packed them, but I have no idea where they are. So I had another set of teeth made to replace that second set. So what I wore on Lower Decks is the third set of teeth.
Wow. And I loved you in the not coming back on Lower Decks. What did you think of the episode when you saw it?
I love the episode. It was, for me, and I believe I'm speaking for Nana as well, it was a great tribute to our show. It was flattering for Nana and I to be asked back to perform our old roles. But things like the opening shot of Lower Decks, where you're going round and round the space station and the theme is playing, that was a tip of the hat, an appreciation for our entire show. And that's what I was most pleased about, was that after many years of being relegated to the back of the line as far as other Star Trek shows were concerned, to have this episode dealing with Deep Space Nine and two of its major characters was a way of saying, yes, we do appreciate the show. We do think that it was worth watching. We do think that it is worth eulogizing.
I think the big difference now with the current Star Trek shows is that they're being made by people who are fans who genuinely love the franchise. And DS9 obviously is such an influential part of that franchise. Even like Tawny Newsome, for instance, on Lower Deck, she is a diehard DS9 fan. So I think that's the big difference now, is with the reference being shown to your show, is that the people who are making the shows now grew up with your show and love it.
Terry Matalas, who was a showrunner for Picard, has oftentimes said to me and Nana, because we've been together at the same parties, and said, I would love to have you back on Picard. If there's a legacy program, perhaps that will happen. And as I said before, I know I would certainly say yes, and I'm quite sure Nana would say yes. I'm quite sure everybody who can do it would do it. And I preface that because there are some actors who cannot do it. For instance, Renee can't do it.
Right.
Or Aaron.
Did you see Max and Chase come back as Rom and Lita on Lower Decks?
I did. That was lovely, and it was lovely to see Chase's character built up that way, and to watch Max doing his farcical stuff, which is he's brilliant at. He's quite brilliant. I learned long after the show was over that the writers realized that Max was better at farce than I was. And they were right. And so when they had farcical situations for the Ferengi to do, they would write it for Rom and keep the more straighter stuff for Quark.
Now, I know you're also a writer and you're a novelist. Please tell me, let's plug your books. Tell me a little bit about your Illyria novels and how people can buy them.
So thank you for asking. I am a novelist. I have at this point written 7 novels. The first novels I wrote were a trilogy. It was called Merchant Prince. And basically those are science fiction books that take place in the 22nd century. I'm also a Shakespeare scholar. So what I was asked to do, because this was an assignment, I was asked to combine Star Trek with my love of Shakespeare. And my first co-writer said, do you know of the historical person of John Dee? Which I didn't, much to my regret later on. And so I just did a lot of research on John Dee, and the novels are about John Dee going into the 23rd century or the 22nd century and finding himself out of place in a world that isn't anything like his own. And the thrust of the adventure is, how does he get back to his period? And those novels, those 3 novels, Merchant Prince novels, there's all finger exercises for me learning how to write novels. And I'm very fond of the novels, but they pale in comparison to the second trilogy I wrote over the last 7 or 8 years, which, as you mentioned, is the Illyria novels. And that goes further with my love of Shakespeare. This time it takes place in Elizabethan England. And again, if we can use this word, stars John Dee. And it is a promise that I had made to the ghost of John Dee that, unlike Merchant Prince, where I was really writing about Quark, but we called him John Dee, I promised the ghost of John Dee that I would write a series of novels that more reflected who he was. And so these novels are historical mysteries. It's about the conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics, which was historical at this period of time. Wars were breaking out over religion. It was comparable to what we have in Iraq between the Shia and the Sunnis. People aren't aware of that all the time, but people in England were dying left and right for being either Catholic or Protestant. Queen Mary is called Bloody Mary because she killed off dozens, if not hundreds, of Protestants. She was Catholic. And then when Elizabeth, her half-sister, became Queen Elizabeth I, she did pretty much the same. She wasn't as bad as Mary, but she killed off her share of of Catholics, because she was a Protestant queen. So John Dee is caught in the middle of this, and the adventure is about finding out about the loyalty of a particular count on an island in the English Channel that is an English possession. And the fantasy part, if we can call it that, and we should, of my novels, they're very historical. There's a ton of history. So the people who read my books are going to learn more about the Elizabethan period, as I have over the course of 50 years. There isn't a day go by that I don't read something that has to do with the Elizabethan period. And as people perhaps know, I also teach Shakespeare, both in local level and also at universities. So it's very historical, but the Count in this island in the English Channel is Count Orsino, and for those of you who are familiar with Twelfth Night, you recognize the name. So the person that's being investigated is Count Orsino, and everybody around Count Orsino are the characters from Twelfth Night. So I'm combining the characters of Twelfth Night with very historical people from Elizabethan times.
Where can people buy the books?
Well, there's three places you can go. The easiest, perhaps, is to direct you to Amazon.com, where the books are on sale under my name, Armin Shimerman. I think you can get them a little cheaper and a little faster if you go to my publisher's website, and that is Jumpmaster Press. That's all one word. Or if you've forgotten the name of Jumpmaster Press, simply go to www.arminshimerman.com, go to books, and you'll be sent the link to Jumpmaster Press where you can purchase the novels. Jumpmaster Press and I have worked out a system so that if you want the books autographed, or indeed if you want a message like the FanFair Signatures, you just ask them. They will send me a book plate, and I will sign whatever you want, put my name on, put your name on it, send Jumpmaster Press back the book plate. They will put it in the book, and you will have a signed copy of the book. One
other thing I want to touch on, another important thing that you're part of is PanCan Purple Stride. I got to talk to Jonathan Frakes about it earlier this year. It's such an important organization fighting pancreatic cancer. And I wanted to plug your team, purplestride.com/Team Trek. I donated this year. And
thank you, John.
I'm planning to walk with you guys next April.
Lovely. Yes. To give you a little background, my wife was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 18 years ago. She's still alive, and she's one of the great miracles of that. Although what PanCan is an organization that is trying to fight pancreatic cancer. And what PanCan is trying to do is to find a remedy, to find a cure. And over the course of Kitty's lifetime, the survival rate has gone from 3 when she was diagnosed. The survival rate was 3% survival rate. It is now quadrupled to 12. Still a low number. 12 is not a great number, but exponentially better than when Kitty was diagnosed. And PanCan is working towards that research. The other thing they do, besides working with doctors and trying to find out a cure, is if someone is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and unfortunately pancreatic cancer at this point in time is the third most lethal cancer around, and unfortunately it's soon becoming the second most lethal cancer around. So when people are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, what PanCan provides as an organization is one, you can call them up and find out a specialist in your area so that you can go to that specialist and get really knowledgeable information about what to do. Pancreatic cancer is, as I've said, is not a death sentence. People do survive, my wife being one of them. And if you go to the right doctor, your chances of survival are that much better. The other thing they do is they help people like what I was, a caregiver. What can the caregiver do to help the patient in order to get through this horrible diagnosis? There's a lot of things that PanCan does, and I recommend highly that people go to their website and remember this website, not only for your own family, but if you have friends, colleagues, anyone who's diagnosed with this disease really should go to PanCan for the best help possible. There is, as you mentioned, Purple Stride. Purple Stride is the event in April that occurs I remember it was in 60 different cities around the United States, where people march or walk for several miles to help raise money for research and the things that I've just been talking about. Certainly there's one in Los Angeles, which we will see you at, John. But there, as I said, ones all around the country. Several years ago, I was doing a play in Kansas City during the course of one of the PanCan marches, and I marched in Kansas City, and there were thousands of people there. Thousands. There's exponentially more people in Los Angeles and probably more in New York, but even so, I was overjoyed at the response to people who wanted to help PanCan. Awesome. I should also mention, and you mentioned Jonathan Frakes. He too is connected to pancreatic cancer because his brother died of it. Mm-hmm. John Billingsley is also connected. His mother died of pancreatic cancer. We have a number of people in Star Trek that have been touched by pancreatic cancer, and they are very grateful for having PanCan available, and we are very grateful for the help that they give us.
Well, I think we have to wrap up, but before we do, I just want to say, on the Shuttlepod show, when you appeared, you mentioned you are an incredibly lucky person. I would say, sir, I'm also a very lucky person. I got to chat with you today. Thank you. I'm very grateful for you taking the time to speak with me. I hope we get to chat in person soon.